In this video, we're going to learn about Dockerfile. So let's start. To understand on how to use Dockerfile, we're going to create a basic Node.js program. So let's start. Let's start with, let us create a new project by creating a new folder here. And we're going to name this as project Docker. Let's open that with VS Code. On this section here, just right click, open in integrated terminal. All right. So from here, let's type npm init hyphen y. Very good. So let's clear this up. Now for our packages, we're going to use Express by typing npm install Express. Let's check our package.json. Okay, so as you can see, our Express is already here. So let's create now a new file by typing index.js. Okay, from here, let's type the following. Let's type cons express require express. Okay, from here, let's assign that to app. Then we're going to assign also the port. Let's say we're going to assign that to port 3000. And then let's create the startup for this one by typing app.listen. So let's bring down the port. And from here, okay, so let's assign a display by typing the console log. And then let's type server running at localhost. Let's start with http colon slash slash or forward slash localhost. Okay, so from inside here, let's bring down the port. But first, we need to apply the double colon here. Okay, so let's drop now or typing the dollar sign with curly braces. We're going to assign the port. Okay, so this will call the execution. So to take effect, we need to apply now the get requests. And to do that, let's call the app.get. And from here, let's assign the root path. Then let's call the request, just direct and rest. Right? So from here, let's forward a test request by typing hello world. Okay, good. So let's try this now by typing node index.js, and there you go. Now let's view that in our browser by simply press Ctrl, then point your mouse in this section, and there you go. Okay, so yeah, so this is the one. So it's working now. Okay, good. So next, we're going to cancel this one. On our next package, I'm going to install NoteMon by typing npm install. notebook. So what it does is whenever we're going to make some changes in our code, notebook will simply do the auto refresh. So for this to take effect, let's step over to our package.json. Okay, so make sure our notebook is installed. Okay, so from here, so let's replace this one by typing start. Then let's clear this out. Then from here, let's call our notebook. Then let's call our index.js. Okay, so to use this one, let's clear this up. To run this code, this time you're going to type npm start. And there you go. So let's try this one. Okay, so that's it, guys. At this point here, we're ready to create our Dockerfile. So let's start. On the root folder, let's create a new file. We're going to name this as Dockerfile, right? In our first line, we need to import the package or the begin process for this code. So since we're already working with Node, let's call that packages by typing from Node. Now, next to that, we need to indicate the version. There's a lot of versions in Docker Online. So just for this demo, I'm going to use the latest version. Okay. So next to that, we're going to indicate the working directory by typing workdir. From here, we need to specify the folder location. So this will hold our source code. On my location, I'm going to create a folder name /app. So take note, this will create on the root folder of your working directory. So let's say if you're for Docker, it will stays on the root side part. Okay, so next we're going to apply now the copy method. Okay, so this is the copy instruction. So what we're going to copy is the local directory by typing period. Next, we need to specify the location as to where you want to copy by typing /app. Okay, then the next instructions that you're going to do is we're going to emphasize by typing or install the package within that folder. So to do that, let's type run. Then we're going to apply the node execution by typing npm install. Okay, good. Now on the next part, so this next instruction will expose the port that we're using. So if you recall, in our index.js, we specified the port 3000. So on our next execution line, we're going to expose this port execution. So let's head over to our Dockerfile. From here, let's type expose 3000. Lastly, same as what we did with our node execution, we need to specify the command that we used to run with our code. Now, if you recall, under package.json, we started by calling this section here, this one. So we're going to apply that in our Docker file. First, we need to call the cmd. Then we're going to apply the command line. So since we call that in syllables, so let's start by typing npm, okay, then comma, then start. So basically, similar to what we did in our previous code. So if you recall, we simply call this line, this FPM start, right? So since everything is already in place, so let's save that. Okay, so at this point here, our Docker file is complete. Let us proceed now with the building of Docker image. So that's it, guys. In creating a Docker images, you can achieve that in many ways, just like this format listed below. To build our Docker, let us type the following by typing Docker build -t. Next, we're going to indicate the image name for the repo by typing img test node. Next to that, we're going to indicate also the tag name. So let's say going to name this as tag test node. At the end of the line, since we're in the root directory, we need to specify by typing that. So this indicates that we're going to get the source within the location. So if you're satisfied with this code, so just press enter. So notice here. So if we're going to build the section, since we have at least 7 or 8, so we have 8 steps. So it's going to pass to each step. So from the root, which is getting the node, down to the CMD. So while waiting for this one, let's observe how this process being done. All right, we're done. Next, let us examine now the build up information. So we're going to expand this one here, this tab, then notice here. So upon executing this code line, notice how does it start. So the first line indicates here. So this is the information or connecting information from here to here. So this literally get the information or checking the Docker Online library if available. Then once found, the first line will be executed. So this execute until this section here. So notice the first part. Now on the second step, okay, so once you completed the first line, notice the second step. So the next execution process, if you scan our code, okay, so in here, this section here, take the next step. So after that, so upon reaching that point, the next step is copying those source code to our slash up or the working directory. So that will be our third step. And on the fourth step, the instruction says that we need to install the package. Okay, so that falls on this section here. Now, within this section, this time it's already converting that into image layer. So this is already in Docker image. So all these information already compiled in one image. Okay, so to know this one, we're going to check on how to view our Docker image. So let's start. But first, we need to clear this line by typing CLS since I'm working with Windows. So if you're working with Linux, so you need to type clear. Okay. Now to view that image, we need to type the following by typing Docker images. Then hit enter. And there you go. So as you recall, we indicate the image or this is the repository and the next one is the tag. So this information is the one we built a while ago. So notice the size. Okay, so this indicates this information. Now, once we're done with the Docker image, at this point here, we're ready now to run this image in our container. So let's proceed to that. To run a Docker, we need to follow the following format by typing Docker run, options, image, command, arguments. As an example, to run a container, we need to type Docker run, Docker image. Next, to run a container under a specific name, we need to type Docker container run hyphen hyphen name, container name, Docker image. And to publish your Docker by typing hyphen p, host IP, host port, container port. As an example, by typing Docker container run hyphen p, host port, container port, and Docker image. To run our Docker image, we need to type the following by typing Docker run space hyphen d hyphen hyphen. We need to specify the name of the test container. So for our container name, we're going to name that as test node container. Okay. Next, we're going to expose or forward the port. But before that, we're going to assign these options by typing hyphen p to publish our test container. Then we have two things from here. So we have the local port and the container port. Now, what are these ports. So these ports are being assigned in our code. So if you recall, we assigned 3000 in our Dockerfile. Also, we expose that or also use that in our code line in this section here. Okay, so let's assign that to our Docker line. So we need to assign that in our local port. So we're going to assign that in port 3000. Then we're going to get the container port. So that's also 3000. Okay, so next we're going to call now the name that we assigned earlier in our Docker image. Now, so what are those? So we're going to call the img test node. Okay, so make sure you follow the correct line. Next, we're going to get now the tagline. So that should be tag test node. Okay, so supposedly this is test. So I just missed the S stop here. So before proceeding with the actual code, okay, so okay, good. So before you're going to proceed with this name of your Docker image, make sure you type these Docker images so that you will get the proper name tag and this repository. Okay, so once done, just hit enter. Okay, good. So if you see this line here, this indicates that our container is complete. Now, to view this container, we can type the following by typing docker container ls, and there you go. So this is the permission or container ID, and the rest are the information within that container ID. Okay, so to test our container, same as what we how we run this code, we need to specify or call the same way as it is. So head over to your browser. From here, let's type localhost 3000, and there you go. To start a Docker container, we must type the following by typing docker start container ID. And to stop a Docker container, we must type the following by typing docker stop container ID. With that being said, we're going to stop our container by typing docker stop. From here, we need to specify the container ID. Just copy this one and paste it here, then press enter. Right? So this indicates that our Docker is already stopped. And to test, head over to your browser, then reload this page. And there you go. Now to start our Docker container, let's set back to our code line. Then from here, let's replace this with start. Then hit enter. Okay, so once more, let's head over to our browser, then reload. And there you go. To stop your Docker container, simply type the following by typing docker stop the container ID. To remove Docker container, simply type docker rm the container ID. Also, to stop and remove all containers, simply type docker rm -f $ left bracket docker ps -a -q close bracket. Let's begin deleting our container. Let's minimize our browser. The first way to stop our container, oops, let's clear this up. Then press enter. Right? So let's check our container by typing docker container ls. And there you go. All right. So at this point here, our Docker is completely stopped. So now let's remove that container. To remove that, okay, so from here, let's replace this section by typing rm. Now, before we're going to remove this one, notice our container is already displayed an empty rows. So to view this container, which is inactive, simply go back to the Docker container ls and add -a. And there you go. So this indicates that our container here is inactive. So now let's remove this container completely by typing docker rm space. Then let's copy the container ID, hit enter. Okay, so let's check now. And there you go. To remove a Docker image, simply type the following docker rmi your image ID. And to remove all Docker image, simply type docker rmi $, docker images -q close bracket. With that being said, let's step over to our code. From here, let's clear everything. Then let's type docker images. All right. So from here, let us delete these images by typing docker rmi space. Then let's insert our image ID. So let's copy this one. Okay, once done, hit enter. Okay, so once done, let's check by Docker or by typing Docker images. And there you go. Lastly, before we're going to end our session, let us discuss this last part, which is the Docker ignore. So let's start. Going back to our code, to use Docker ignore, we need to create a new file in this section here. It should be next to Dockerfile. All right. So what's the purpose of Docker ignore? So since we're running all this code in our Docker file or in our Docker image, there are things that we need to ignore while compiling the Docker file. So one of the major things here, let's say for this one, so these node modules doesn't need anymore in our Docker images. So we can simply type that. All right. So other than that, if you have some other files in here which is not needed on the execution, simply added that in the Docker ignore. And that's it, guys. So that's all about Dockerfile. If you think this video is informative, please hit the like button and subscribe. And see you guys next video series. Cheers.